advice and opinions expressed by Dr. Granpeesheh and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh and Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism. Doreen Granpeesheh. Dr. Granpeesheh. Doreen Granpeesheh. Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask the questions on Ask Dr. Doreen.
Good morning and welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. I'm Shannon Penrod and I'm here with the fabulous Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh. Good morning, Dr. Granpeesheh.
Good morning, Shannon. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be here, although I'm not there in person, but still.
It's still amazing. I mean, it's extra lovely when you're here, but it's still amazing to have your time and your beautiful brain whenever we have the possibility. You guys, if you don't know, Dr. Granpeesheh is a true expert in the field of autism. She's been working in this field for more than 40 years. I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. I swear there's a painting aging under her bed somewhere. But she has devoted her life, really, truly, to our community, to helping our kids, to helping our families that surround those kids. So we're so thrilled that she takes this opportunity to answer you guys' questions in real time. So we always have a starting topic, and we're going to be getting to that in just a minute. I will tell you, I'll tease it so you guys know. It's challenging behavior at school. Now, we will answer questions on any topic here. I will pose those questions to her when you write them in. We have a couple of starting questions, though. I want to remind everybody that we're live right now. What's today's date? It's like the 14th, right? April 14th, taxes loom. April 14th, 2026. So we're live right now on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Our incredible Chris Desmond is starting to show you on the screen some of the different ways that you can connect with the show and ask your questions live. Now we know that a lot of you, in fact, the lion's share of you are listening in podcasts later on because you got busy things while we're live. That's okay too. There are lots of different ways to listen to us in podcasts. We're available wherever you get your podcasts as a free download. Now, if you notice on the free download, there will be advertising. We're all adults. We understand how that works. I hope you embrace that and go, woohoo! They paid for this, so I didn't have to. However, some of you wrote in and said, hey, we really want to listen to the podcast and we don't want interruptions. We're busy people. We have a way for you to do that. If you go to glow.fm/autismlive, you will be able to, for a low $5 a month, get everything that we do on the Autism Network, including Ask Dr. Doreen and Autism Live, and that will come directly to your inbox, and it will come free of ads for $5 a month. We're not trying to get rich off of you, just trying to pay for costs. Gotta have the lights on, right? So take a second, and if that's your jam, have that done. But otherwise, check out on YouTube the Ask Dr. Doreen channel on YouTube. We've been doing the show now. We're in the 15th year. I know, it seems crazy. That's a long time, which means we've answered a lot of questions. Check it out. It's possible that Dr. Granpeesheh has already answered the question that's most on your mind. But if she hasn't, now's your opportunity to write in on whatever platform you're watching. If you are listening in podcast, an easy way to send a question, if you wonder where do I get the questions ahead of time, people send them directly to me at Shannon, SHANNON, at autism-live.com. Shannon at autism-live.com, and I take those questions. Bug Out Wheels is with us and says, awesome. So thrilled that you're here with us this morning. So, Dr. Granpeesheh, it's lovely to have you. It's the April, we call it the A month here to be politic because everybody has a different word, whether it's autism awareness, autism acceptance, autism action, autism allies, autism accomplices. That's what Amy Gravino always says. I don't need an ally, I need an accomplice. Like, will you go to jail with me? Yes, Amy, I will. So anyway, whatever the A word is, we want to celebrate you and your life. So we're here. You can start asking questions right now. But our starting topic today, Dr. Granpeesheh, is challenging behavior at school. this year for April A month, because there's a lot of families that are struggling at school this year for various and sundry reasons, we decided to take education and have that be our overreaching topic this month at Autism Network. And we're doing a lot of shows based on that, but not all of our shows. But we had a lot of questions coming in about how to deal with challenging behavior at school. If it's okay with you, I want to start with this one that's a little bit long. I apologize. They say, I hope you can answer my question. I'm so frustrated. My son diagnosed 3-2. They gave two numbers, Dr. Granpeesheh. On the spectrum is in second grade. I get regular notes that come home to tell me when he has done things, like push another child, spit on his desk, throw things, etc. I don't ever hear the context of these things, even though I always ask. Also, I never hear of any consequences either. I assumed there weren't any. My extreme mistake. Today I had to go to school to pick him up for a dentist appointment I forgot. They sent me to his room, and when I got there, he was standing in the corner with his hands taped together, and he was crying. The teacher told me this is his punishment for throwing things. I was so upset. I ripped the tape off his wrist. She informed me that it was just painter's tape and would easily rip off. She knew I was livid. I took him from the classroom and I was apologizing to him the whole way to the office. I barged into the principal's office and told her she better get a lawyer. Then I took my son and came home. I know that my son can never, and that's all in caps, spend another day in that woman's classroom. I don't know what is going to happen, but I need to know what I could have done differently because I need for this to never happen again. My heart is just bleeding for this mom and this precious little boy. So.
Yeah. And I've unfortunately heard similar horror stories from other parents.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's just because these teachers don't have the training they need, and also because usually it's an older teacher who feels they know what they're doing, they don't need any additional training, they've had a class of special ed students for years, and why should I listen to some young person who's going to come and tell me what all this ABA nonsense is about, right? And that's the problem, Shannon, because there's so many things that could have been done differently. To answer the parents' question, I think in general, you're not responsible, first of all. There's not, the teacher is responsible, so please don't blame yourself. But I think that you can, whenever you have a situation coming up, like, you're getting notes sent home that say the child has misbehaved in one way or another, and you're not quite sure what's going on, and perhaps you ask each time and you get some sort of answer when you ask, but you still don't have a system in place that works, call an IEP, call an emergency IEP, and kind of address the elephant in the room. Like, make sure that it is written out that there needs to be a notebook that goes back and forth, and in this notebook, you need to know, what was the antecedents, like what happened before the behavior, how long did the behavior take place, what exactly was the behavior description, and what was the consequence, how was it consequated. Like, these things need to be written down every day so that at least you're informed and you're not surprised and now you're wondering how long has this type of punishment been going on. It's insane. I guess also, you absolutely have grounds to sue because nobody should be punishing kids right now. Like, this is just, it's insanity what you went through. It's not a normal situation. Unfortunately, it does happen, excuse me, but it's not normal. It shouldn't happen, let me put it that way. So I would say an emergency IEP, first of all, to kind of write out all of this. And then, as often as you can, I guess, do those drop-ins, right? Drop in and see what's going on. It's a burden on parents to have to
sad is the word. I feel grief for parents because, you have that moment when you turn your child over to somebody at drop off for school, knowing that they're supposed to be educating your child and trusting that, you went through the IEP process and trusting that these people, that their hearts and minds are in the right place. And I do want to say, because a lot of times people write in and say, Shannon, you talk so badly about school, and yet I'm a former school teacher, and I love school. It's just that it's a lot of individuals is the problem. You can have 300 million brilliant teachers, and it just takes one who's responsible for your child for this kind of thing to happen. So we have to be vigilant as parents, and I will say this, that with all the recent budget cuts, I tell, especially our parents at CARD, I tell them that I'm happy to look over their IEP and see if I see any glaring red flags. And when I sit down to look at an IEP, I look at a couple of, it might be a 42-page document filled with a lot of different things, but there are places that I start, and on the front page, there is a place always, and all IEPs are different, but there's a place where it says BIP attached, and that box is either checked or not. And if it's not checked, it's an immediate red flag for me. Because if you have a BIP, and I'll ask Dr. Granpeesheh to explain what that is, but if you have a BIP and it's attached and it's checked on that first page, that means your BIP is legally binding. It's now a part of this whole document that's legally binding. And if they don't follow the BIP, they can be sued, and it's real money. So it's as serious as a heart attack. And if it isn't checked, then is there a BIP? And why isn't it being legally enforced? So maybe, can you tell them a little bit about what a BIP is?
Yeah, BIP is the Behavior Intervention Plan. And it's basically what I just described. So it's what is the plan if a child has a challenging behavior? And the unfortunate problem, Shannon, is that, excuse me, just like if you ask a teacher, what is in the IEP, most often the teacher doesn't know, because it's a document that they write in the beginning of the year and they don't really pay attention to it on a daily basis. Same thing with the BIP. That's why it's important to have very frequent kind of IEPs, which you as a parent can call when you need to. And also that's why it's important for the teacher to be forced to send home a memo about what happened each day and how it was consecrated. Why? Because that memo is the only real way you can tell if they're following the BIP. And that's what a BIP is. It basically says, these are the situations, the behavior, a challenging behavior, a particular challenging behavior may occur, and these are the ways to deal with it.
Absolutely. And thank you for that point, because having a BIP doesn't mean that the teacher knows what it says and doesn't mean that the teacher will follow it. But for me, it's I find that schools are so afraid of being sued because they can't afford it. It's the best step that you can look at for a parent and say, have I taken care of this? But then tomorrow, I have to say that on tomorrow's show, we're doing a parent-to-parent talk where I'm solely talking about my top 10 tips for cooperating with teachers, working with teachers. And I'm going to give it away here that one of my tips is to laminate the BIP and give it to the teacher as a gift with a magnet on it so that they can stick it to their file cabinet right next to their desk. Doesn't mean they're going to read it. Doesn't mean they're going to understand it. But if we're going to do everything we can as parents, that's my tip that somebody told me. It didn't come from me. But it's hard.
It's very hard. It's very hard. And I think, it's teachers, there's a few things to realize with teachers. It is true that the field of ABA came after, right? So a lot of behavior analysts are young. And so teachers, I've had this myself, and I'm not young, but I've had this many years where teachers would say, I know what I'm doing.
Right.
Why is this 25-year-old coming in into my classroom telling me what to do. So there's that. Like you do need to meet the teacher, identify and make sure that this is someone who is open to behavioral procedures. And you need to make sure the behavioral procedures are written down, which is the BIP. And then you also need to make sure that the teacher knows how to implement them and does implement them on a daily basis. And that's kind of the notes and memos going back and forth.
I remember, because I didn't go into teaching in the public school in the normal way. I didn't go to get a degree in teaching, but I had been teaching college, and they were so desperate for teachers, and so it was after 9/11, and I decided that I needed to return to the classroom, and I went back into the classroom, but I was amazed at how little teachers at that point, because that was Jem wasn't here yet, so that was more than 22 years ago, at how little resources were there for teachers when they were dealing with challenging behavior. I had this happen the other day that I was talking with a parent, and they were trying to decide between sending their child to school, this was a 3-year-old, or doing their full hours of ABA. And I said, let me just ask you something. And this was a teacher. They were a teacher. And I said, let me ask you something. You're a teacher. How much training? And she was a much younger woman than I am. And she had a 3-year-old. And I said, how much training did you get on autism when you went to get your master's in education? And she said, a half day. We talked about it for a half day. And I said, now that you're a parent of a child with autism, do you feel that that in any way prepared you? And she said, oh my goodness, no. No, these teachers, they don't have any idea. And I say to parents all the time that I estimate that schools are, I would think the best school is 10 years behind. And that's the best school. There are schools that are way more than 10 years behind on what we know about autism and what we know about behavior. It's dark ages in the school still. So something to keep in mind when parents are choosing between school, and it's horrifying how little is there. I know at one point in my first year of teaching, you could go and do resource things, that they would have workshops that you could go to. And I actually went to this amazing workshop where they talked about the 4 usual suspects, about that a child might be doing something because of attention, they might be doing something to escape. It changed the way I taught. Way before I had Jem, it changed the way I taught. But most people didn't go to that workshop. and I was like, why are they not talking about this with everyone? Okay, next question. Is it just me? I feel like schools have no idea how to intervene in challenging behavior. No idea at all. My son is very high functioning and is in a mainstream high school class. Recently, he was suspended in gym class. He was supposed to be doing yoga. It is in his 504 plan that he has front row seating in all of his classes. Apparently, the phys ed teacher thought that didn't apply in her class, so she had him in the 3rd row of the yoga class. The girl in front of him is very well endowed and tends to wear tight shirts. I want to be clear that this doesn't in any way excuse what my son did, but I think it was very hard for him not to stare. The girl noticed and was understandably upset. She asked my son to stop staring at her, and he responded with, he said, big boobies. He was suspended for 2 days because the school has a zero tolerance for sexual harassment. He is devastated and embarrassed. I know this did not need to happen, but I want to know what I can do to support my son so he doesn't feel bad, and also to make sure he doesn't do it again. Horrifying.
Yeah. It's a different situation too, so I'm really glad that you have this parent writing in, because it's very different than the typical challenging behavior that our kids may exhibit, and then parents are concerned about. Because this isn't really a challenging behavior. This is more a kind of lack of understanding of someone else's perspective, which is the theory of mind issue. And we talk about this a lot, and it is it's funny when there's a field like autism where there are so many issues the other individual feels if you're staring at them, what are the appropriate things that you can and cannot do in those types of scenarios. And yes, the school is to blame definitely in the sense that the punishment was inappropriate, like your child, they didn't do something malicious, they did something simply because they didn't know the social rules around it. And also, yes, you're right, if your child was in the front row, they would not have had this experience at all. So to begin with, they went against the IEP plan. So those are all true. The question is, sort of what to do going forward. And I think what to do going forward is not a behavior where you want to have, negative consequences for it. It's more an issue, this is more an antecedent control. Everything we do in changing behavior is not just about, if someone does something wrong, you punish it. It's about teaching skills that help prevent these behaviors from occurring to begin with. And I think the skills that are necessary for your son have to do with being able to understand social rules, being able to understand social rules are there in order to protect perspectives and being able to understand how this girl might have felt and why what he did isn't socially appropriate. And it's important for your son to learn that what he did isn't, horrifying. It's not horrible. It's not something that he should feel awful about. It's just, something that may have made this individual feel a little self-conscious. So putting it in perspective for your son is, I think, very important. Teaching him how to deal with these types of things in the future, I think, is very important. And I think that's where you should be concerned and focused. And Shannon, this is why I always say it doesn't matter if it's a child who is very minimally affected. There are so many benefits to ABA, and these are the types of things, obviously, that we've been teaching for years and years and years, all of the theory of mind stuff.
Absolutely. So for this parent, I know at CARD, you guys offer services and you even have amazing social skills classes. Now, what would you recommend? And if they're not near a CARD office, skills?
All of those things. So I think that, depending on if they're with a ABA provider or not, they need to work with the ABA provider on appropriate social skills in group settings, perspective taking lessons, understanding things having to do with empathy and so on, and just social norms, really. And if they're not with an ABA provider, as you said, yes, we have all of this out on skills. You absolutely can look at how to teach these skills by becoming getting a license for skills and then going in there yourself. And you can look under the cognition curriculum and the social curriculum and the executive functioning curriculum. And I promise you, you'll find a lot other stuff that's also very, very useful. Things like being able to regulate one's own behavior as well. So there's a lot of stuff in there that you'll find very interesting.
Yeah, there's a whole lesson on inhibition about understanding what are private thoughts and what do you speak out loud, which seems like in addition to all the other things, this would be helpful.
Exactly.
Of course, people have all these ideas about what ABA and what isn't. And recently somebody posted something that kind of ticked me off because they were talking about, and it was about play, but it applies here. They were saying, there's a difference between play when a child is actually playing and when a parent is trying to steer the play toward a lesson, and that's not really play. That we should stop kidding ourselves and, when is a parent going to sit down and just let the child do what they want to? And what ticked me off about it was that assumes that all children know how to play. What if you have a child who doesn't? You can set the toy there and go, okay, play, and they don't know how to play, and they're missing out on all that fun because they don't even know how to do it yet. And I think the same thing here. People go, oh, well, just talk to your son and tell him, you can't say those things. And the difference between doing that, listen, if you could just do that, your son has probably been in a circumstance where somebody has said that before, probably, maybe not, but us talking about it and then the child had the epiphany, then we all would have done it, right? But sometimes your child needs a more in-depth example, and they need somebody to make it fun, and they need to see somebody do it so that they can have all the emotions about it and understand it completely. And that is what they would get from ABA. That is the experience that they would have of people, giving them practice at it, not just lecturing at them and then saying, I expect you to know that, and it's going to impact your life if you don't know how to do it. That's
and I strongly believe in the whole concept of understanding why.
Yes.
There's a number of things that we tell our kids to do or don't do, especially kids on the spectrum. It just becomes difficult, like it becomes, the child then starts to really question almost everything they're doing. Am I doing something right? Am I doing something wrong? What did I do right? What did I do wrong? Can I do this? Can I not? It just increases their anxiety when it's just a set of rules.
Yeah.
So I feel like the rules need to make sense. And the only way they're going to make sense is if you really explain to the child why. And in this scenario, the why has to do with how the other individual felt. That's really all it is. It's like making sure the child really comprehends the whole thing, as you said.
And it's so all-encompassing, that being able to perspective take. And I will say this, the more I've learned about teaching perspective taking to individuals on the spectrum, the more I have learned that people who are not on the spectrum need perspective taking lessons. Including myself, but it is an interesting thing. Okay, I love this next question because it really cuts to the heart of it. What kinds of behavior can be worked on in a classroom setting, and which behaviors truly warrant a more restrictive environment?
That's a great question, because I think in general, there's, I guess, two types of things that are more present to classrooms. I look at classrooms in general as a location of practice, first of all. So the vast majority of new skills that we learn, if they can be learned individually as a solo person, should be done in a more restrictive environment, in an environment where the individual is alone. I don't know that I want to call it restrictive, but not in a classroom. So a one-on-one with, like the way that I like for our kids to learn is there's a one-on-one instruction that occurs, and then this is now generalized to all kinds of environments where, like for instance, at home, with family, etc., social behavior, and then also at school with peers, and in the classroom setting, because that is a setting where every individual has to be exposed to that at some point in their life. So that's one thing, is like school is a generalization setting in my mind. The other thing is that there are certain behaviors that are just group behaviors, social behaviors, and those are only occur in school. How to play in a group, how to communicate in a group, how to socialize with others, that sort of thing. And those are, of course, the lessons that you can practice the precursors, I guess, on one-to-one, but really you can't teach those types of things unless you're in a group of other children. So hopefully that answers the question. I think in general, and Shannon, you and I have talked about this a lot, it's like any behavior that you want to teach, you want to take the time to focus on that behavior outside of all the external distractions first, and then generalize it to the actual school environment or social environment.
And because we're using a lot of terms here, I want to back it up and explain for parents. Within a school setting, if we talk about restrictive environment, that's usually the school setting. So is your child in a special day class? Are they in a class? Sometimes they'll label them different things for, are they in the emerging language, or are they in a moderate to severe classroom? Any more they tend to.
I think on the IEPs, the breakdown starts with sort of in example, day special ed, or then you can go to a reverse mainstream. So like we're pulling the child out of special and putting them in the mainstream program for some of the classes. And then it's like in a regular ed class for 2 hours of the day. And it's like in a regular ed class with a one-to-one, and then it's just regular ed. It's kind of like less and less one-to-one, I guess, to the individual.
And then sometimes you're in one of the, so that's your setting. So you're in a setting, but if they take you out of the setting to teach one-to-one, that's called a pull-out. There's push-ins and there's pull-outs. And so this person asked the question about the restrictive environment, but a lot of times when you are in a more restrictive environment, it's supposed to give you more support, but I don't know that it necessarily works on behavior.
Maybe I misinterpreted the question because a lot of times in IEPs they also refer to one-to-one ABA as a restrictive environment. So I guess what I was saying is that it has always beneficial to have a behavior analyst or behavior technician teach your child first before you go to a generalized kind of open regular ed environment. But yes, you're right. If the question pertains to should my child be in special ed or regular ed, I would always say depending on your child's needs, and if special ed is actually going to provide them more one-to-one, then sure, they can start in the special ed with if they are actually getting more one-to-one attention. But you can also be in regular ed and have a one-to-one aid, which is always better because you're in an environment where you're able to now learn and model from typically developing kids around you.
Michelle says 100% on point, and they agree with Bug Hot Wheels. You're awesome. 15 years. Wow. Thank you, Michelle. But I also want to say, going back to what you were talking about, that where ABA fits in, I find that parents are often confused because a lot of them haven't seen ABA and how it works with school before. And I just want to go back to what you were saying. The analogy that I use with parents all the time is that if you were going to take your child skiing and your child had never skied before, I don't know any parent that would go, well, let's just throw you on the hill and we'll see how you do. I don't know any parent that would do that. The parent would go, okay, we're going to go over to the bunny hill and there's an instructor here who's going to teach you these 8 things before you ever get on the hill. We're going to, and we're going to teach some things without even the skis on, but and listen, I'm not a skier, but I know this, that, eventually you put on the skis and they teach you how to point the skis together so that you know how to stop, right? Before you ski. And sometimes, our society has gotten very used to just throwing kids into a classroom and going, this is school. And for our kids, this is not always beneficial. Our kids aren't always going to learn, how do I do this? They need to be taken to the side and taught some things first before they go in the classroom. And then maybe they go back and learn some more things and feed that back into the classroom. This is why for kids that are younger than 5 especially, I'm always saying to parents, please make sure you're maximizing your ABA hours and prioritize that above school, but especially this year. But if your child is over the age of 6 and legally you need to be attending some school, understand that ABA is a medically necessary, it's considered a medically necessary appointment that your child is excused for. So you can be pulling them out of school with no recourse whatsoever to be able to get that one-on-one to go back into the classroom and have, as you said, that environment in which to practice it.
Right.
I love that way of looking at it. Here's the question. Is there a way to get my daughter's teacher in school more training in autism?
Yeah, there's many ways to do it. The question is whether your teacher is available and interested and amenable to it, and whether the school is willing to make that happen. So there are lots of ago, we made a whole platform of training for teachers in our Institute for Behavior Training platform, which is online. And teachers, they learn all the different techniques of how to manage a classroom, how to manage different behaviors in the classroom, and so on. And the question is, will the teacher value it, want it, and does the school allow it, and is willing to kind of pay for it and give the teacher time to do it?
We used to do a thing many years ago when it was Teacher Appreciation Week. We would work with Institute for Behavioral Training, and they would give a parent could sign up for and get a gift certificate with a code for their child's teacher for Teacher Appreciation Week. And the one that I would always recommend that people started with, there was a training, I'm sure it's still there, that was for teachers how to prepare for things like what do you call it when you practice? I can't think what fire drills. And of course now we have first person shooter drills. How to prepare and have all the children with all the sensory needs, how to help them prepare for a fire drill, a drill, or for an actual emergency. And it was a very low cost thing for the parent to be able to purchase this for their teacher, give them a certificate. It outlined what they would learn in it. And, I know I gave it, this is how long ago it was. My son was still in school with a classroom teacher, and I gave it. And what we found is that some teachers actually listened to it, watched it, and went, oh, this is fascinating, and looked at what other trainings were there, and because they were so low cost, would buy some for themselves. That it was a great way to walk them in. Now, did some of the teachers not bother? Because we could tell who cashed theirs in and who didn't. Yeah, I would say it was about 50-50, but for the parents that their teacher did watch it, I know the teacher was very grateful, and the parent felt like, oh my gosh, I did something that actually may help my child in an emergency, but certainly during fire drills. I'm sure that we have something like that now, that the good people over at Institute for Behavioral Training would still do that.
Oh yeah, and these trainings, Shannon, are like, as you know, $10.
Yeah.
Like they're very, very inexpensive, and they're very, very valuable, I would say, for anyone. For teachers, there's also the parent section on IBT. These are very valuable training. I mean, these days, honestly, you can actually just go to an AI algorithm and say, what do I do when a behavior occurs? I'm a teacher with 20 kids in my class, and the algorithm will tell you. But the videos and things that we had made, which are extremely helpful, are still out there, and they really are very useful because they actually show video, and there's a person demonstrating and showing you and so on.
Absolutely. And that's instituteforbehavioraltraining.com. And of course, as you said, there's the whole internet and there's AI. I find that a lot of people, I'm a recent convert because you've been talking in my ear for over a year about AI, and I don't think I really understood how to ask the prompts. I don't think I understood how specific the prompts were and
right.
could be, and the more specific the prompt, the better the answer you got. I think that there are probably a lot of people out there who don't know that you could ask it, I have 20 children that are on the spectrum.
You have to give some background. And that's the beauty of these AI algorithms, that you can turn on or off, you can select, but basically you can say learn from here on, learn who I am. And so as a teacher, if you say one time, I have a class of kids who are 5 years old, and there's 25 kids in the class or 20 kids in the class, it will remember that, and it will also age with you. So next year you might have older kids, or it will always remember that fact. If you say I'm a special ed teacher, it will remember that fact. So for future questions, it will always remember those things, and it goes along with you, and they're very, very useful. I think to teachers especially who are just don't know how to handle a specific challenging behavior. But as I said, thinking in the old days we would put these kids in, we'd punish these kids and we'd put them in a timeout room and all this kind of stuff. And that still occurs. You know, I knew teachers who would strap the child down to the chair. Like I knew there's so much horrendous stuff that occurs. I knew a teacher who had tied the child down to the bathroom because he wanted to train potty training that way. I mean, there's just so much stuff that has taken place, and it's about the individual realizing there are things I should be doing and shouldn't be doing, and if I did them 20 years ago, doesn't mean I should still be doing them now. You know.
It is so frightening, and as a parent,
Yeah.
you know, you can be there on a regular basis and still not. You know, I speak frequently about the 1 year that I really have regrets about when my son was in school. And I went to an IEP meeting the night before school started with this teacher, and I came home crying and feeling like she wasn't the teacher, but I felt the need to like try to work with her. And it's the biggest regret I think I have in my life, that I wish I had listened to my gut and said, no, we need a different teacher, because this was a woman who, and I've publicly made so much fun of her, and she knows who she is. But she came into the meeting and literally said, and I put this in my one-woman comedy show, she said, there's nothing you can tell me about autism. I have 2 nieces on the spectrum, and she'd met them once. This was the attitude she was coming in with. And every red light in my head went on, and I'd met people before who were like, I already know everything about autism because my friend's sister has a child with autism. Like, it's just the most frightening perspective in the world when somebody thinks they know everything and they know nothing. But I put up with her, and I tried to work with her, and I was in that classroom, you know, not a daily basis, but certainly a weekly basis. And it wasn't until April that I found out that she spent most of my son's time that year was spent in a room by himself, where she would bring in the worksheets because she felt that was better for him. It was quieter. Nowhere in his IEP did it say he needed to be in another room. I couldn't figure out what was going on because she always made sure he wasn't in that room when I wasn't there. It was a little side bump out room that they have to take kids to do one-to-one, but she'd send him by himself. And when we found it out in the middle of an IEP meeting, it was total fireworks. I thought I was gonna leap across the table, but we had a tape recorder.
How did you find out? Was it just she like?
You know what? I had brought in work examples, and I said, "Can you explain to me
why this?
Why did he only answer the first part of the? Were you not giving him direction?" And she said, well, I can't be in all places at one time. He's in that back room. And I can't come in and teach him when I've got, 32 other kids. I can't come in there. And I said, what do you mean he's in that back room? And she goes, well, that's where he sits most of the day. And of course, there was this rumble around the table. And I said, how often is he there? And the conversation went something like this. I said, and why is he back there? And she said, well, we don't want to stigmatize him. And I said,
oh my God.
And I said, so you are choosing to segregate him so that he's not stigmatized, but so essentially you did not educate him. Is that what happened? And she goes, well, no, but that's where he sits, and I can't go back there and teach him. And that's when I closed my book and I said, we're done here. And I turned to the woman that was running the meeting, and I said, you and I will have a meeting tomorrow. And the teacher was like, well, no, we have other things to discuss. And I said, oh, no, we don't.
Wow.
And I will say this, there was compensatory education for the year that was given that ended up being the best possible thing because we got a tutor who caught him up on everything that he missed. But the self-esteem portion that he lost in that year took a couple of years. And I think that's the thing that makes me the most mad.
Absolutely.
And the person, we had sent people in to retrain her. We had done all kinds of things. And in the conversation afterwards with the administrator, who was actually a really nice person, who apologized, I said, I did this all wrong. I knew she was a problem from the beginning, and I should have asked for a different teacher. And I said, but I thought we could train her up. And the administrator said, I thought we could too. And she said, we failed too. She said, you didn't see it, I didn't see it, but we see it clearly now. And I had to go do a comedy show to make fun of her. Because that's the only way, Dr. Granpeesheh, that I could deal with it, is that I had to find a way to make fun of her and some of the other people in the school setting. There's a video out somewhere on the Autism Live channel where you can see me becoming characters of the different people at the IEP, because it was the only way that I could make sense out of it. But I say this to parents, you can be so diligent, diligent, but you got to keep asking questions and follow your gut. And I say to parents all the time, listen to your gut, and if you think this person is not the person for your child, don't give them the benefit of the doubt. They don't deserve it.
Yeah.
They don't.
Yeah.
Ask
I'm with you on that. A lot of times, I think it's parents feel like embarrassed, and if anything, having a child on the spectrum teaches you to get over that, because you shouldn't be, they should be, and keep following your gut and keep asking and keep pushing and be that, squeaky wheel, be that person. It doesn't really matter if they like you or not. What matters is that they do the right thing.
Oh, absolutely. Which leads into the last question that I've got here. If somebody wants to write, we've got a few more minutes. You can write in a question quickly now. But the last question I have is, what qualities should I look for in a teacher for my child? He is 6, starting school, nonverbal, and very reserved.
And what's the question again? What qualities should I?
Yeah. What should I be looking for in a teacher?
Yeah. So I guess gentleness, I'm not sure what the right word is, but sometimes when our kids are very reserved, they need someone who can kind of come to their level of energy. So you sort of need someone who's gentle. ABA, people think ABA is harsh. It's not. Like, some of the most incredible behavior analysts we have here at CARD are probably the most gentle people I know. Shannon, and I think it's just very important that the person is calm, gentle, rewarding, and really takes the time to get to know your child. Every child is different, and when teachers don't take the time, they tend to use rules that may backfire with a given child. So I think those are probably the key points. It's just someone who's very open-minded, gets to know your child, is willing to slow down, be gentle, be caring. It's more about, I love that you mentioned the self-esteem part of it, because a lot of times people don't realize that it's probably the most important thing our kids learn in school is self-esteem. Certainly more important than geography. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like very, very important for a teacher to realize that their job is not just to teach academics, but to also teach this child to have self-esteem and believe in themselves and know that they can be successful.
Yeah, I love that you said is willing to slow down, because I think listening. I always notice if a child walks in with an adult and it's somebody who's going to work with the child, of course the adult will acknowledge the adult, but in my mind, I kind of watch to see how quickly do they acknowledge the child, and how do they acknowledge the child. One of the tricks that I was learned but it's hard when you haven't started school yet, but once you've started school, it's around this time of year that there's always a back to school night, and the parents are invited, and they'll decorate the classroom with all the artwork that they did in class that year, and it's great. You should go to it and heap praise on your teacher, but then very quickly they'll ring a bell for parents that have 2 kids. They'll ring a bell, and it's time to switch to the other grade, and that's your time to shop, to go to the next grade and look at and meet the teacher your child with you and see how they react, because they're already aware of your child, the next grade up, and it was fascinating to me because sometimes there would be a teacher that would have the most cool, decorated classroom, and their kids did the most amazing assignments, but you'd walk in and they were disconnected and they were like, oh, when I'm talking to this person and like that, and I would go, oh, no, this is not the classroom for my kiddo. But there were other classrooms that we would go in and they would say hello to me. It wasn't that they ignored me, but they would immediately orient on him and go, hi, are you coming to my class next year? And if a person acts like they like your child, I think it's the first good sign.
Yeah, and if they respect your child, I think that's very, very important. And it's the way you said it, it made me realize I do that all the time too. I pay attention to how quickly do they greet the child, how do they speak with the child, how do they respect the child. And I think that's, do they consider the child a whole human being?
Yes.
Those types of things are very, very telling. Absolutely.
Yeah, or are they a drill sergeant? And it's like, well, you're not, I've had a teacher say, well, you're not supposed to be here right now. And I'm like, thank you. Don't need to be here because I'm not coming. If you're all the rule-oriented thing, it's great, but it's not going to work for me and it's not going to work for my kiddo. It's an opportunity to go in and see. I could also tell, I'm just going to say this because having been a teacher, everybody talks, right? And so people, if your child has an IEP by April, they're already talking to the teachers for the next year about who's going to take who and who's going to do. It's not decided yet, but they're aware of who your child is. So if you go into that next grade up and you introduce, watch their face. I had teachers be like, oh, I hope you get to come to my classroom next year. I would love to have you be here. And I had other teachers say, I'm not sure why you're here. Right?
No, it's true. Absolutely.
And it makes a difference. And it's hard as a parent to know. But it also, you can change in the middle of the year. Michelle says, I asked for admin to select a teacher to the best of their ability before the end of the year, then asked to schedule a meeting at the end of the school year and then another at the start. Get them on the books. Yes, but some schools will not do that, and they certainly won't write it into the IEP because sometimes staff leaves during the summer and they don't want to be on the hook for it. But yes, if you can say to them, I'd love to know beforehand because I'd love to meet them, and that's an ideal opportunity to say, what kinds of things should we be working on this summer for him or her to be successful in your classroom? The teachers love it if you ask that.
So true.
And we also, I'll tell you, the other thing on the walkthrough, we would look at what kinds of things are they doing. I remember when he was in high school, I could see that in 11th grade social studies, they were going to be working on the French Revolution. So what we did is all summer long, we were reading, what's the Dickens, Tale of Two Cities, and we were watching movies that were about, and we watched, we didn't get to go see Les Mis, we did that later, but we got to see a video of it, so that he had a better understanding of what was happening then, and it prepped him for when they were discussing it in class. I think that kind of stuff is so useful in the summer, whether they're very little kids and you're working on the multiplication tables, or you're just working on letters or numbers.
100%.
Or the oldest.
I absolutely agree. I used to do the same thing. I would always, in the summer, I would take workbooks for the upcoming class.
Yes.
Wherever we were going on vacation, and we would prep on stuff that my kids would be exposed to in the coming year.
Oh yes, those are great on a plane too. And you know who has those a lot is Costco. If you look,
they're everywhere, Shannon. Yeah, agreed. And they're so good. And I would take like 2-3 different ones of each grade for my kids, and we'd do one a day. It was fun. Yeah,
Khan Academy too. To do some stuff ahead. Woo! That got him ready for junior high math. Oh, such a thing. All right, I have to let you go because you have a meeting in just a couple of minutes, but I just wanted to take a minute. I hope you had a wonderful birthday.
I did. Thank you so much. Thank you to you, Chris, and I'm already thankful
somebody also said teachers pay teachers. I love that. And a lot of things on Pinterest with teachers pay teachers. Oh, great things to work on for the summer. You guys are amazing. We're back tomorrow with Autism Live, and I'll be talking about my 10 tips for having a good relationship to work with the teacher, not against the teacher. Ways to really make that happen. And the one best tip I'm saving for tomorrow, how to ensure that you get the best teachers next year, and it's something you do this year. Ooh, it's good. Sparkly, and it doesn't cost you anything. Okay, so you'll have to tune in tomorrow for that. But Dr. Granpeesheh, we adore you. Thank you for your time. And we will see you next week. And until then, everybody, give your kiddos a hug from us and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
Hi, everyone.
Don't forget, you can watch Ask Dr.